Good morning. We're learning as Chusr for Shlema Filan Chaya Baserach and for Meir and Cyril Peril. We are on the Mishnah at the bottom of Kuf Ches Amud Aleph. Shor Ze Oila. He said this shor should be an Oila. It's a specific lashon where he didn't say Harei Alai, but he said Shor Ze V'Nistov, and it got a mum. Imrata Yavi B'Dama Shnayim. Shnei Shvarim. I'm sorry. He could bring two other animals in its place. Shnei Shvarim Elu Oila. If he said these two shayris should become again, should be a Oila. Again, not Harei Alai, but they should be. And he could bring one shar in their place. Doesn't make a difference if it's two in place of one or one in place of two. Because in this case, the basic proposition over here is that he didn't take the responsibility upon himself. He put it on the animal. So when the animal becomes ineligible because it becomes a balmum, the money, the value is still dedicated, still has to be transferred onto something else, but it doesn't have to be dafka the same quality as what was before. So two is better than one, or one is better than two, whichever the case may be. But it's either way, it's irrelevant. However, Rebbe says it's also. The Gemara is going to explain. L'chatchila, he says, as a takana, since if he would have said Harei Alai, Rebbe says, as we're going to see, Rebbe had said in the previous Mishnah, he holds both, not just that you're not allowed to do taking a bigger one, a better, and replacing with something smaller. He says you can't even take something katan and replace it with gadol, or worse, rabbatoy. You can't replace in either case. So Rebbe will say, as we're going to see in the Gemara will explain that you can't do it. You can't exchange because of a takana, even in this case. Another example of this, ayil ze oil of an istoiv. This ayil should be an oil and it got a mum. And ratza yav v'dam of kavis, you could bring a lamb in its place. Black cam is worse than a ayil, but it doesn't make a difference. Kavis ze oil of an istav, and ratza yav v'dam of ayil. Rebbe Isa, Rebbe again says it's also. The Gemara, Reisha shar b'mana v'hevi shnayim b'mana lo yatza. A shar worth a mana, they explained that he exchanged with two that are worth a mana. So each one is less valuable than the other one. He's not yaitza because it's you're not allowed to go down in value. But Gemara shar zeh v'nistayev shani, like we explained, since in this place he said shar zeh, he didn't say harei alai. That is different. Let's see the Rashi just to put it into our heads the way Rashi understands it. The kiva Zak Rashi is zen and stav shani on the top line. The kiva da amar zeh akrav ayla the stav azalei nidrei. Still his nether is done with. His nether was to bring this animal. The sulei matzah l'mikrav aval hasan da amar harei alai shar b'mana chayiv atshi aviyenu. He still has a chayiv on him. Zak Gemara shnei shvarim elu ayla v'nistavu ratzu yavid meim echad. Rabbi in the Reisha of the Mishnah, it might appear, it seems to appear to say that Rabbi is only saying his din by Shnei Shvarim Elu. He could bring one, and Rabbi is saying it's also because one is not as good as two. Right? My timer shouldn't have like God over heavy cotton. It seems to be saying, Rabbi saying it's also because you're just bringing one instead of two. It seems he seems to be saying, even though it's nistav. So if it's nistav, according to Rebbe, we're saying it's nistav. So why should it be taka a problem? It's like the Rashi explained. By the case of nistav, where it was said harei zeh, and it was nistav, it should be mutter. Loishari Rebbe. Rabbi just means that l'chatchila you can't do it. He agrees with the Tanakama that b'di'evet, if you do so, it would be a kosher carbon. But he's just saying, like we said, as a takana, the chamu misakin, you shouldn't do so. Why is he only arguing by a cotton gadol v'hevi cotton? He should be chaylik also by cotton v'hevi gadol. Doesn't make a difference. Rabbi always holds cotton v'hevi gadol as aser. Even the case of Harei Alai in the previous Mishnah. So Rabbi Yakula Milsa Polik. Einachanami, Rabbi is taka chaylik even in the case of cotton v'hevi gadol. But not the Rabban, not the Maski will say. He just waited for the Chachamim to finish what they said. He let them say both of their things, and then he argued. Bahadam miflagalayu. Teda diktani aisles that oil of an estav ratzu yavi b'dam of kevis. Kevis oil of an estav ratzu yavi b'dam of aisle. Rabbi Isaac. So you see over there we brought the second case. Over there was the katan v'hevi gadol, and even so, Rabbi is being Isaac. Over there you can't say he's only being chaylik on gadol v'hevi katan. So Shema Mina Rebbe is arguing in both tzur. Iboilu mimina lemina mai. What's the din if he goes from one min to another? Right? The Mishnah had only talked about cases of one shar and two shar, or an ayel and a keves. What if he switches from a shar to an ayel? What's the din? Toshma. So we bring a right from a brayso. A shar is a oila b'nistav. If a shar was an oila. Okay, the case of our Mishnah, it became Gadamum, Liyav Davav. Can't bring exchange in its place a ram. Although maybe Davav Bezelim. He can replace it with two rams. Rabbi Isaac. Rabbi says, no, you cannot replace it with two rams. Lefisha Ein Bila. Because he says, with two rams, you're gonna have a problem. Rashi explains that you're gonna have, if you have two menachos, then a person who will see it the animal that got a mum, you can see there's something concrete to show that you exchange what you had originally intended for two other animals. But the menachos, there was nothing to see by the menachos. And all of a sudden this person is going from bringing one mincha or from no minchas to bringing two minchas. So that Rabbi holds is going to be a problem. It's as if he's not being mekayim his neder. Because originally it was supposed to be b'kli echad, and now it's b'shnei kelim. But in any case, you see that you're able to switch from a shar to an ayel. So Gemara Shema Mina. So Gemara Yihachi Ma'ir Yitrei Afilu Chad Nami. If that's the case, what's the difference between two? Even one as well should be. Even if he tried to switch it with one shar, why is it no good? We're saying a shar to a single ayel is not good because it's gadol v'hevi katan. But we're talking about nistav. The Rabbanon Leishanu Luben gadol lekatan. By the Chachamim in our Mishnah, it was only Rebbe that holds is a problem. But according to the Rabbanon, by nistav, it's always good. So there's one Tana, there's one Shita of the Rabbanon, not like our Mishnah, that they say by Nistoev, they agree with Rebbe to the extent that if it's Katan V'hevi Gadol, Gadol V'hevi Katan, it's not going to be good. So to go from a shar to an ayel is not good, but to go to two ayelim, which has its own mila, that it's two, that's okay. Rebbe Eisel Fisheim Bila. We said Rebbe says it's asur because you have a problem with menachos. So time the aim bila yesh bila shari. It's mashma. The only reason why it's no good with two is because you have the problem with the menachos. But the two elim themselves are good. Vatanan ayel za elim nistav ratzu yavidam of keves elim nistav yavidam of ayel Rebbe Eiser. We said in our Mishnah that Rebbe clearly is chaylik whether it's katan v'hevi gadol v'hevi katan. So why would this be good if not for the fact of menachos? There is a machlekes tanoim about what Rebbe Shita is. There's one Tana who holds that by katan v'hevi gadol, where it's nistav, Rebbe said that there's no takana. So if it didn't become a balmum, if there's no problem with the carbon, egel v'hevi par, keves v'hevi ayel, yotza. Stomach rabbanon. We have a brisa that says that you could do egel to bring a car, par, and keves v'hevi ayel. Vice dice that cotton vehevi gadol. This is like really going back to our previous Mishnah. We see that if it's not a balmum, so you have to actually bring it. You could exchange it for something better than it. The Mishnah continued. Rotza yevi b'dam of bays. You could bring with its money 2 shvarim. Amrav Menachos Barzid Amarav Loishanu Lada Amashar Ze Oila. That's only if he said this shor should be an oila. If rather than saying shor ze oila, it said shor ze olai oila hukfa. At that point, it becomes a chiyuv on him. It's as if he said harei olai. When he says shor ze olai, it's as if he said harei olai. Correct. The Gemara v'dilma olai lahaviu. Kamar. The Gemara asks, how does the words mean what you're saying? You're saying when he says shor ze olai oila. You're saying that the real thing is the alai, and the zeh you're ignoring. But that's not really what's happening. The Gemara is asking, it's as if he said, this shar should be a hukva that it itself is a carbon, and not that it's a harei alai. But I'm taking upon myself that I'm going to bring that carbon, that this animal that I've been kaiveya, that it should be a carbon. But I only want the achrayas to be on the carbon, not on me. Meaning I'm taking responsibility to bring it, but I'm not taking responsibility to replace it if something happens to it. But if he says shorze and its value should be alai oila, it should be a oila for me. So then he's saying damav, so then he's taking achrayas. So then, even if it's nistav, he has to replace it, and therefore, if he's not going to be able to just exchange it as he wants,
Then it has to be 1 for 1.
Then he can't do gadol v'hevi katan. You can only do katan v'hevi gadol, which the Chacham say you could always replace. You can't replace it with something worse.
But can he do 2 for 1?
2 for 1. So I get very confused about this because I'm not sure if 2 for 1 is worse or better. I would imagine 2 for 1, 2 less valuable ones for 1 more valuable one is worse. Right? I don't know. 2 for 1, I'm sorry, it should be better. 2 for 1 should be better because now you're getting a more valuable one. But on the other hand, instead of having 2, you have 1. So in that sense, it's worse. So I'm not really sure about that. If it's always going to be considered worse or not. Zok the Mishnah. Ha'omer echad mikivsei hektish. Someone said, one of my kvasim, one of my lambs, I'm being mekadosh. The echad mishayri hektish. And one of my oxen, one of my cattle is hektish. V'hayulo shnayim. And he happens to own 2. He has 2 lambs or 2 oxen. Hagadol shebehen hektish. The larger one is hektish. He didn't specify, so we assume that mekadosh is ba'ayin yafa mekadosh. Shloisha, if he has 3, beinani shebehem hektish. The middle one is hektish. The Gemara will explain that size. The first thing we just said that you go according to the best one, and now we're saying by 3 you go according to the middle one. We assume he meant the middle. Pirashti v'nidei amash pirashti. If he's, however, that was all. If he said, I just said I'm bringing an oila. But if he said, I said one of my cows should be an oila, one of my lambs should be an oila, but I don't remember which one. Oisha amali abba v'nidei ma. My father told me one, but I don't know what he said. I don't know what he was referring to. Hagadol shebehen hektish. In that case, the best one is hektish. Saktamara. From the first thing that we said in the Mishnah, the question that we alluded to, Alma makdish ba'ayin yafa makdish. The first thing we say, if you have 2, you, and the person said, I'm being makdish one of them, you take the better one, you see ba'ayin yafa. Ema seifa beini shebehan hektish, Alma makdish ba'ayin ra makdish. You see, he picks, we say the one that's worse than the best one. Amar Shmuel choyshin af lebeini. It doesn't mean that the second din of the Mishnah doesn't mean to say that he only has to bring the Beinani, but he has to be chayshish for both the best one and the Beinani, because the Lagabi Cotton Ayin Yafu. When we say Ayin Yafu, it doesn't necessarily mean the best; it means better. It could mean better, so it could mean either the best one or it could mean the middle one, because the middle one is better than the worst one. So what should he do? He waits with the second, the middle one, when we say chayshish until it gets a mum. Then he makes a monashach. He says, I'm going to exchange the kedusha of this balmum, and I'm going to place it on this gadol. So if the gadol was the one I was really mechoyev in, then I didn't even have to be meichel the kedusha on it. And if it was kaddish, now it got a mum, so I moved the kedusha. I was paid it with this big one. This din of the Mishnah that we say you go after the best one is only when he said that we have to be chayshish for the middle one. That's only when he said one of my shvar. Aval amar shar b'shayri hektish. But he said a shar from my shvarim, that lashon, which has more of a mashmoyis that he's talking about his best. He's saying the shar of my shiris, with the royal the shar. Hagadol shaban hektish. Then the best one is hektish. Shura tura beturoi ka'amar. He's saying the best tar, the best shar of my shara. Is that true that this lashon is more mashma, the best one, even if you have more than two, even if you have three? Says, I'm selling you a house from amongst my houses. Mareu aliyah. He doesn't have to give him anything good. You could just give him an attic. You could stick him in the attic. You agreed to buy. You know what you bought? You bought the attic with the slope roof and the pigeons and the squirrels running around on top. Lav mishum degriya. Isn't he allowed to pick that because it's the worst? So you see, even if someone says, he said bias bebesi. How is that different than the lashon of shar mishari? We said shar mishari means the very best, and now we're saying bias bebesi. You can even interpret it to mean the worst. Aliyah doesn't mean the attic, rather it means the aliyah, the best, whichever house he has, that's the best. It's like shar mishar. The Gemara is going to later retract this. Meisvei, shar b'shayri, hektish, v'chein shar shel hektish ezar b'acheirim. If he said this case of Rabbi Baravua, that he said the shar of my sharim is hektish, and also a shar shel hektish that got mixed in with other shars that are not hektish. Hagadol shaban hektish. First of all, the best one of them is hektish. Because if we're not sure which one is hektish, you have to you owe a certain amount of money to hektish according to whichever one is the most valuable. That value is choyev to hektish. But kulam yimku l'tzarchei. In addition, they all have a kedushas haguf, or not a kedushas haguf, kedushas damim on the animals. So you have to sell them to be used as oilers. You can't now just treat them as chulin, but they have to be sold to someone who's going to use them for oilers. Once they have a chash that they might have been the ones that are hektish, you have to be chayish for that. With the main chulin, but the damim is chulin because you already paid for your damim with the large one. But the other ones are there to just because they have their intrinsic kedusha that can't go away, so you sell them to someone who's going to use them for an oil. But in any case, we see that we are chayshish for the others, even though he said shar b'shari, and Rabbi Baravua had said that always means just the. So you should be able to just bring, in the case of shar b'shari, it should be that he could just bring the best one, and then he's done. Why does he have to sell the other ones? L'tzarchei oila. So Gemara Terguma Ashar Shal Hektish Star Bacher says Einachanami. The second part of the Mishnah of the Brisa, we had said after we said that the first one becomes Hegdish, all the rest of it is only going on the second case where it got mixed in. So that case we know we're chayshon in all of them that they're Kaddish, So you take care of your monetary achrayas by giving the biggest one to hekdesh and bringing it as a carbon, but the rest still might have been kaddish. So you sell them to be used as an oil. It says v'chein. So Gemara Triguma Agadol. When we said v'chein, it means that we said the same din will be on the shvarai shar mishoiri behektish, and then it said if you mixed in one, it said v'chein, but that v'chein is only legabi the first part that the gadol goes to hektish, not on the second part. The whole part of the other shayrim is only applicable to the case of where he mixed in his shar of hektish with other shayrim. Meisvei, bayis v'beisi ani moichala. Someone says, I'm selling you a house from amongst my houses, the same case that we mentioned before, the nafal, and if the house, and one of his houses fell down, mareyu nafal, the seller can tell the buyer, your house is the one that fell down. Eved ba'avaday ani moichalach, I'm selling you one of the eved from my avadim, umeis, and then one of his avadim died, mareyu umeis, the seller can give him the mace. Why don't we go see which one, if it was the one that he had specified, meaning if it was the gadol, why don't we say according to Rabbi Bavua that when he says shari b'shari, so the same thing when he says bayis a basi or eved me'avada, it means the best one. So see if that's the one that died or that's the one that fell down. That's the house that fell down. Why are we saying that the seller can choose and pick the one that fell down or the one that died? If it's the cheapest one, he shouldn't be able to say that. We should say his meaning was the best one. This is a whole that you can't compare a sale to hektish. By hektish is such a concept that since it's ba'ayin yafa nois and this is what he intends, we can assume he intends to give the best. But when you're going into business, obviously, in business, people are always looking for all the advantages want to keep the advantages on his side. So his intention is not to give his best thing. We could even answer the original question we asked from Bayis V'Beisi, that we had said it's the same din. It's not necessarily true. Bayis V'Beisi is not going to be the best one. It's going to be talking about it could even be, it doesn't have to be, it's talking about the aliyah, the attic. It could be talking his houses, but he gets to pick which one. Zak the Mishnah. Someone says, I'm being makabel and oila on myself. Yakrivenu b'mikdash. He has to bring it in the Beis HaMikdash. B'mhikru Beis Chanyai, if he brings it in Beis Chanyai, the Gemara on the next plot, on the next Amid, is going to explain what Beis Chanyai was. It was a counterfeit Beis HaMikdash in Alexandria and Mitzrayim. That this fellow Chanyai, who had his whole, there's a whole story about what happened to him. He ran over there and he built it. And it's going to be a machlaikas in the Gemara if he built it as a Beis HaMikdash for the Rebbeinu Shalom incorrectly, because you can't build one in Mitzrayim, but at least that was its intention, or if he was really intending it for Avodah Zarah. But in any case, in either case, whatever his intentions were, it's not a kosher Beis HaMikdash, obviously. So someone who brings the carbon there is going to be chayiv karas. It's going to be chayiv for bringing the carbon b'chutz. So if he says already oila, if he brings it in the Beis Chanya, lo yotza. He's not yotza. Not yotza. He has to bring another oila in the Beis Hamikdash. If he says I'm going to makabel myself an oila that I'm going to bring, he said at the time he gave it that I'm bringing it in Beis Chanya. Yakrivenu b'mikdash. It's still an oila, and we ignore the part that he said Beis Chanya because that's not valid. You can't do that. So he has to bring in the mikdash. And if he brings it in Beis Chanya, he's yotza. It's obviously a very strange thing. What does it mean he's yotza? The Gemara is going to explain, going to give an explanation for that. It's going to explain that it means that he doesn't have to bring another one because we say that his assumption, what he was saying is, I'm only bringing it for Beis Chanya, and therefore it's not a valid carbon, and he's not yotza. I mean, he doesn't have any chiyuv after he brings it. Rav Shimon says it's not an oila in the first place, so Shakvena Beis Chana, so he's not he can't even bring in the Beis Hamikdash even if he wanted. Hareini Nazir Yegaleach b'Mikdash. He says, I want to be a Nazir. If someone says he's a Nazir, Yegaleach means to shave himself. But what it really means is to bring the karbanos that come along with the end of his Naziris that he has to bring. So he does that in the Beis Hamikdash. If he went and he brought his karbanos Beis Chanya lo yotza, he's still a Nazir. I mean, he wasn't yotza from his chiyuvei Naziris. Hareini Nazir shegaleach Beis Chanya, but if he said at the time he was makabel the Naziris, that he's going to bring the karbanos in Beis Chanya, Yegaleach b'Mikdash. He becomes a Nazir, but he has to be Megaleach b'Mikdash. Galach b'Beis Chanya yotza. But if he was Galach b'Beis Chanya, he's Yitzis. That's going to be a problem. So the Gemara is going to explain. Rav Shimon says he was never a Nazir in the first place. When you makabel Naziris al Tnai to bring Beis Chanya, to bring the Karbanos Beis Chanya, that's not a valid Tnai. So therefore, it ruins the beginning his Kabbalah's Naziris. Just like he said before, when you makabel an Oila, bring Beis Chanya, it was never an Oila. So Gemara, Yatza. How can we say in the first case where he says he brings it v'im hikriv Beis Chanya Yatza? How could he bring it in Beis Chanya? He gets killed for his chayiv kares for bringing bachutz. It's an Oila that he brought bachutz. It becomes as if he said. Rav Hamnuna says it becomes as if he said, I'm bringing this oila, but I'm making a t'nai that I shouldn't be mechoyev in it by saying I'm going to bring it in Beis Chanya. He's saying I don't have to replace it. It's like Rashi. I'm Rav Hamnuna. Kivin Amar al Menachos kivenu Beis Chanya. Havik Amar al Menachos ahergena. He's as if he said I have the right to kill the oila. I don't have to actually bring it. That's why he's yotza, because his t'nai helps that it's not. He said, I'm not. He basically is saying, I'm not chayiv b'achrayis. It is an oila, but I'm not chayiv b'achrayis. He's saying harei alai, but then he's making a t'nai that changes it from harei alai to harei zeh. Right? A person could say harei zeh oila, and then if something happens to it, he's not mechayiv. So he made a t'nai that changed his status to make it harei zeh. Aval chayiv kares. He's still going to be chayiv kares mishum shchutei chutz shekar lo shem oila. According to this, it is an oila. Rav Shimon says it's not an oila. His t'nai made it that this whole thing doesn't work. You say you're going to bring it to Beis Chanya, you are mevatel yoel. But according to Rav Hamnuna, it is an oila, but he took away his achrayas from it, and he made it into as if he had said harei zeh. Amalei Rava. How are you going to understand this part? You don't have this option. You can't say harei alai, that he can say harei zeh nazir. There's no harei zeh in Naziris. He has to bring the karbanos if you're a nazir. You have to bring the karbanos properly. So how could it be yaitza? This person was meaning to give a gift when he said, I'm bringing it to Beis Chanya. He says, when I bring the carbon, when he said I'm bringing the carbon, I'm going to bring it to Beis Chanya. He's not the most educated person. He says, listen, I'm willing to bring a carbon, but only if I could bring it to Beis Chanya, which is around the corner. To go schlep all the way to Yerushalayim, I'm not going to bother. So in that case, it's not a carbon. So if he taka brings it to the Migdash, then it's an oila. If he doesn't bring it to the Migdash, then it's not. He's not going to be mechayiv to bring another. Nazir nami ha'gav l'tzur nafshik kamachav. And the Nazir also, he's saying, I'm not bringing mekabel naziris on myself. I'm just taking upon myself the responsibilities of naziris. I'm only willing to accept the naziris if I could do it in Beis Chanya, but not if I have to go to the Beis Hamikdash to bring the cup. Rav Hamnuna Amalach Nazir Kedika Amr. But Rav Hamnuna says, listen, you had a good taina from Nazir. So Nazir Taka has to be Litzaure, because you're right about the problem, the way I'd understood it, Lagabi Oila. But I still stick to my guns that Lagabi, the case of Oila, when he said that I'm going to bring the Oila to Beis Chanyoy, that he's just not being Makabal Achrayis, but he doesn't mean it to be an Oila. Rav Yochanan also agrees to Rav Hamnuna. The Amar Rab B'Bachan Amar Yochanan Re'alei Oila Shekavenu Beis Chanyoy V'Kriyu Be'eretz Yisrael Yotza. He says I'm going to bring it in Beis Chanyoy, and he brings it in Eretz Yisrael. Yatza v'anish karas. He's chayim b'chayv karas. He didn't bring it in. He brought it somewhere not in the Beis Hamikdash, so it is an oila. According to Rava, it was never an oila. He just said, "I'm only going to bring. It only should be an oila if I can bring it in Beis Chanya." Tanya Namiyacher earlier oila shekvena b'midbar v'gru be'ever hayarden yatza v'anish karas. Someone who says this lashon, you see that it's like the Hanuna and Rabbi Yochanan, that he is being mekabelet, as so it is an oila. But he still has to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. If he brings it somewhere else, he's going to get einish karas. But he wasn't mekabel achrayas, and his meaning was that I'm not being mekabel achrayas. So the mission. Hakayanim sheshimshu beis chanya. The kayanim who went to this Beis Chanya, which was, like we said, an invalid Beis Hamikdash, lo yeshamshu b'mikdash b'Yerushalayim. They get a knas that they're invalidated to do avodah in Yerushalayim. They can't go to the Beis Hamikdash. And certainly, if they Beis Chanya is at least a little bit better. It's not, it's supposed to be some kind of Beis Hamikdash. But if they did avodah for an avodah zara, then they're certainly not allowed to do avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. These chayanim that went on the bamas, on the non-sanctioned mizbechas al mizbech Hashem b'Yerushalayim, they can't lo yalu, they can't go on the mizbech Hashem b'Yerushalayim. Kim achlu matzos b'kerev achechem. But they can eat matzos, they can eat the minchas together with their brothers, with the other kayanim. They get the status of a balmum, that they're allowed to get a share of the karbanis, but they're not allowed to do the actual avodah. That's their knas. Amar Rav Yehuda, koyin sheshachat la'avodas pechavim, a koyin that shechts la'avodas pechavim. It means he shechted. He didn't do the other avodas hadam, but he did the shechita at the beginning. If he afterwards does an avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, it's not a problem, because shechita, as we're going to see, shechita is not a sheirus. The isser is you're not allowed to serve the avodah zara. And shechita could be done by a zar, so when a kohen does it, it doesn't make him possible to do the avodas of the kohen of a kohen. That's the shita. Amar Yitzchak bar Avdinimi Ma'ikra. Where do you see this? Because of that they were misharis, that they served in front of their avodah zara. V'hayil beis Yisrael michshel oven should be for the Bnei Yisrael for a stumbling block, and an oven and a sin. Therefore, I'm going to raise my hand against them, and they're going to bear their sin. And it says afterwards, they shouldn't come to be a kohen by me. So we're able to die that the pasuk is telling you, if you do something of service, meaning an avodah that can only be done by a kohen, that will passel them from doing, if they do it in Beis Chanya or by avodah zara, that's going to passel them from doing it in the Beis Hamikdash. But shchita, which is not an avodah, that does not passel them. Itma, shogig bezrika. What happens if instead of doing it b'mezid, the kohen did the avodah b'shogig? He thought he was not well educated, and he thought Beis Chanya is fine, or he thought avodah zara was fine. He didn't know. Rav Nachman again, the same machlokes like we said before. I'm sorry, we're going to see. Rav Nachman is going to say in a number of similar machlokes. Rav Nachman always says that it's kosher, that since it was b'shogig, he doesn't answer himself. Rav Sheshes said it's not. It's us. Rav Sheshes, how do I know that he does avodah b'shogig, that it becomes possible to do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash? the pasuk that we quoted before, it should be a stumbling block and a sin. My love, oy michshel oy oven. It means either a michshel or an oven. Michshel shaygig v'oven mezid. So one pasuk is to tell you the mezid, which is the obvious one, and then even the shaygig michshel is telling you even a shaygig you can't do the avoid in the base hamikdash. Nachman michshel the oven. He says you don't. It's not two separate things. He says he does a michshel by doing an oven. Amar of Nachman mino aminala. Nachman says, where do I know that he's going to be chayiv, even that he's going to be potter when he does it b'shayik? He's not going to be excluded from doing the avodah. The Tanya, the keeper hakayin al nefesh shageges b'chata. The kayin will. Where is this pasuk? Yeah, the keeper hakayin al hanefesh shageges b'chata. It's talking about someone who's ovid. It's going to be mechayiv. It's going to be mechaper by bringing this carbon on a person who did avodah zara. Hashagegas b'chata b'shkaga. It says hashagegas b'chata b'shkaga. It says twice. Malamet shekayim b'skapa alidei atzmai. But the fact that the Torah says two times hashagegas b'chata b'shkaga tells you that the kohen can bring his own carbon. If he does avodah zara b'shagig, he can bring the carbon to be mechaper on himself. But my. So what did he do that he was mechoyev, that he needs a kapara? If he did shchita and was saying he's going to get a kapara through bringing this chatas, why does it have to be talking about dafka shaygig? Even if he was mezid in the chayt, in the shchita, he should be able to get a kapara. Why does it have to be dafka shkaga? Elalav bizrika. Elamaya must be talking about actual carbon, and we're saying that Rav Nachman says it's saying that he can get a kapara on it. So you see that he's not going to be also to do the avodah when he does even zrika b'mezid. Rav Sheshes amalach Rav Sheshes amalach la'olam b'shchita. We were talking about shchita, b'mezid le'nasa misharas la'avodah kechavim. But if he's b'mezid, even if he's a shchita, if he does shchita b'mezid, he's going to become misharas la'avodah kechavim, meaning that it's true that what he did was not a service to avodah kechavim, but he himself is doing something he's making himself into a person who serves avodah kechavim. While it's true that could have been done by a zar, the kohen who's doing it changes his status, that he becomes someone that is doing that is a misharas. And that is, according to Rav Sheshes, that's enough to aser. So Rav Sheshes is going to say that even a shgaga, a mezid by shchita is going to be aser, and a shgaga bezrika is also going to aser. Vazul tamay, the itman, hezid b'shchita. If he's mezid b'shchita, if Nachman Amar Kabana Reich Nichaya, Nachman says it's not a problem because, like we said, shchita is not a shiras. It's not a service. Like Rav Sheshes says that the kohen himself becomes a misharis. Nachman Amar Kabana Reich Nichaya Toli Avid Shiras. Rav Sheshes Amar Ein Kabana Reich Nichaya Nasa misharis Lavais Gechav. Like we said. Let's see another couple of machlekes between them. Amar Nachman Mino Aminala Detanya. Kohen Shabbat Lavais Gechav Mishav Kabana Reich Nichaya. The man, someone. Where do I know that a kohen Shabbat Lavais Gechav Mishav that his carbon is going to be kosher? But my ilam b'shagig my v'shav. What does it mean v'shav? He did it b'shagig. He doesn't need a tshuva. Shava aymedu. He never did anything. He never intended to do anything wrong that he needs a tshuva. Elef pshita b'mezid. So that's why Rav Nachman said it's b'mezid. And even so, he can go and do the avodah later on. If it's shchita, b'zrika kishav ma'avi. And if it was by zrika, what does it help to be shav? If he did it b'mezid, it's not going to help. Ha'avid lo shiras. Elalav b'shchita. B'sheshes amar l'chal la'olam b'shaygi. No, it's talking about shav. V'hachikam im shav me'ikra. If he was a shav from the beginning, in that case, if he did a shchita b'shaygi, then he's going to be excused. Another example. They have the same machlekes. We had one machlekes by mezid shchita. We have a second machlekes by b'shaygig zrika. And now the third machlek is if he bowed down, he didn't do an avodah, he didn't bring a carbon, but he bowed down to avodas carbon. Shesha says he's disqualified. Nachman says it's okay. If he didn't, he wasn't mishtachve. He didn't do a ma'isa, but he just gave fealty to an avodah carbon. The same machlek. We need all four. We said the first two of a shechita b'shayig and a zrika b'mezik and a zrika b'shayig. Be'ikamar sheish from the avad leishiras. That's where Shesha said it because he did a service. Al b'shchita the le'avad leishiras by shechita where there's no service. Maybe he'll agree to Rav Nachman that he's going to be kosher to do the avodah in the future. That's at least an avodah. By bowing down, that there was no avodah at all. At least hishtachava is a maisa, but maybe by just saying that he's worshiping avodah zara, maybe he'll be kosher. It's only words. Maybe that he'll be made to Rav Nachman that it's not going to pass him. That's why we need all four machlekes. Okay, we'll stop over here. And Be'ez Hashem, look forward to our see him tomorrow, which I believe is unfortunately going to be on Zoom. And probably we're going to have to start Chulin also on Zoom. I guess we will, because that's Matzah Shabbos.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, have a great day.